In late May, a Fedora contributor's account started doing something strange, reassigning bugs it had no business touching, writing replies to maintainers that were weirdly persuasive, pushing a patch into Fedora's actual installer. The contributor says he got hacked. Nobody can fully prove otherwise. And the thing running his account for weeks? Almost certainly an AI agent operating completely unsupervised inside one of the most widely used Linux distributions on Earth. This isn't speculation. This happened, and it's still not fully resolved. Let's get into it. So here's exactly what we know, sourced straight from the Fedora DevL mailing list, as documented by LWN. On May 27, Adam Williamson, a longtime Fedora QA developer, emailed contributor Nathan Giovannini directly, CCing the entire DevL and test mailing lists so the whole project could see what he'd found. Williamson said he'd been combing through Giovannini's Bugzilla history and recognized the signature of some kind of agentic AI system operating unsupervised across Fedora's bug tracker and several upstream projects. What was it doing? Mass reassigning bug reports to itself, despite not maintaining any of the affected packages. Mass closing bugs prematurely when the correct process was to mark them post and wait for the fix to actually land downstream. And in at least one case, it submitted an incorrect patch, and when maintainers objected, it replied with more LLM-generated justifications until it wore the maintainer down into merging the fix anyway. The patch went into Fedora's installer, Anaconda. Here's where it gets messier. Later that same day, Giovannini replied privately to Williamson, claiming his credentials had been compromised and that he had nothing to do with the AI system. Williamson's response, paraphrased, "Fine, but we now have to treat everything this account has touched as suspect." Then it got weirder. Someone claiming to be Giovannini posted publicly that they'd regained access to GitHub and Fedora and were securing and reviewing all involved systems and credentials, linking a GitHub account. Williamson checked. That GitHub account was 1 hour old, and the tone of the message didn't match how Giovannini had actually communicated with the project, going back to 2018. So to be fully accurate with you, we do not have a clean, confirmed answer for who or what was actually behind the keyboard. Was it a hijacked account being puppeted by an external attacker using AI tooling? Was it the contributor's own unsupervised automation that got out of hand and he's now covering himself? Hacker News commenters raised the same doubt. Is this even confirmed, or is the "I got hijacked" story itself part of the noise? Fedora's own team treated it as unresolved and erred towards maximum suspicion, which is the right call. Here's the part that should actually worry you. The LLM-generated pull requests didn't just get proposed, some were merged into Anaconda and they shipped. Anaconda maintainer Martin Coleman confirmed the patch had been reverted and that related PRs had already shipped in an Anaconda release 2 days earlier, prompting the team to untag that build out of an abundance of caution. Think about what that actually means. A Linux installer used across the Fedora ecosystem briefly shipped code that came from an unsupervised AI agent pushed through a possibly compromised human account that nobody caught until after release. And one commenter on the mailing list put it bluntly: an AI agent automating an attempt at an XZ-style compromise would probably look exactly like this. If you remember the XZ backdoor from 2024, years of patient trust building before the actual malicious payload, this is uncomfortably similar in shape, just compressed into weeks instead of years, because the patience was outsourced to a model that doesn't get tired or impatient. So naturally, the project's response was, let's talk about two-factor authentication again. And this is where Fedora's internal politics get interesting, because Red Hat engineer Daniel Beranger pointed out that mandatory 2FA had already come up after the XZ backdoor in 2024, and the only outcome that time was a soft recommendation that proven packagers should enable it. Nothing actually moved. This incident reopened that exact debate, After discussion, Fedora is moving to require 2FA specifically for the proven packager group, the contributors with the broadest commit access across the distro. But there's a real complication nobody's glossing over. Fabio Valentini pointed out that a lot of the malicious activity actually happened on Bugzilla, which runs its own separate account system that may not even support 2FA. Beranger's response was basically, that's not a reason to delay mandating it on the main Fedora account system. And Bugzilla itself may become less relevant if Fedora eventually migrates to its newer Forge issue tracker. And then there's the very human side of this. GNOME developer Michael Catanzaro said he uses 2FA literally everywhere except Fedora, even though his Fedora account is among his most sensitive, because Kerberos ticket renewal doesn't work properly with 2FA in GNOME online accounts. That's not a hypothetical edge case. That's a maintainer telling you the tooling itself is part of why 2FA adoption stalls in these projects. Here's the framing I want to leave you with, because there's a myth floating around that Fedora got hacked in some dramatic external attacker sense, like a movie hacking scene. The reality is less cinematic and more disturbing. This wasn't a 0 day. It wasn't some elite exploit. It was a contributor account, possibly compromised, possibly not, running an AI agent that didn't need to be sophisticated. It just needed to be plausible enough, often enough, to wear down human reviewers who are used to giving good faith contributors the benefit of the doubt. That's the actual threat model here. Not genius malware, just volume, persistence, and a system designed around trusting humans who show up consistently over years. Fedora does have a policy on AI-assisted contributions approved last year, which places accountability on the human contributor and requires transparency when AI tools are used. Submitting unreviewed, low-quality machine-generated content is explicitly called out as unacceptable, but that policy assumes a human contributor acting in good or bad faith. What happened here routed around that entirely, through a stolen account rather than a contributor breaking the rules. So the policy simply had no mechanism to catch it. So where does this actually stand as of right now? 2FA is being mandated for proven packagers specifically, not project-wide yet. Fedora's broader long-term response is still being worked out. The Bugzilla gap is still open, and there's no confirmed, agreed-upon account of who was actually controlling that AI agent in the first place. If you're running Fedora day-to-day, nothing here requires you to do anything right now. The bad patch was caught and reverted before most users would have even seen real impact. But this is the clearest real-world case so far of what agentic AI actually looks like as a supply chain risk to Linux. Not theoretical, not a thought experiment. It already got code into a shipped release. If you want the unfiltered version of this, the LWN thread and the actual mailing list are linked below. I'd rather you read the primary source than take my word for it. Let me know in the comments whether you think mandatory 2FA project-wide is overdue or whether Fedora's cautious rollout is the right call given the Bugzilla gap. Subscribe if you want the rest of this week's Linux news. And as always, my Ko-Fi link is in the description if you want to tip me or buy me a coffee, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.